Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. This is Griswold of FINOS. Hope you're doing well. Today on the podcast, my new friend and guest is Mike Long. Mike is the CEO of Kosli. And Mike, say hello. How are you, sir?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Aaron. I've been looking forward to this for a while now.
Same. And I'm glad that we finally were able to sync schedules. So I want to find out a little bit about you. You're obviously the CEO and founder at Kosli, but let's start there and see where we end up.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah. Briefly on me. So I'm a technologist by background. I studied computer science and machine learning. Actually, back then I was looking at autonomous agents, and I even got funded for a PhD at the time. I was like, oh, I can't really do that. There's no jobs at the end of that road.
That's not a thing. That's not a
So
thing.
there's no future in AI, was my conclusion. So obviously I'm not very clever. So I ended up going off into the oil and gas industry, making robots. So I was building mechatronics, putting science into robots for a good 10 years in England and Norway and China, making these big systems that would drill for oil, do marine seismic acquisition, drag 100,000 sensors behind a boat, make some booms and
Right.
listen to the echoes. It was a lot of fun, involved a lot of coding, a lot of open source as well. And yeah, a lot of wearing overalls and being familiar with O-rings, which was fun also. Sorry, this is my dog just coming in.
That part of the
Um,
program.
yeah, but I was always interested in how people and teams make technology. So even as a student, I was into extreme programming, test-driven development, CI/CD, and you pick up all the tools along the way and you use them at work. And then at a certain point, I thought I'd really like to make this my thing. So I went into consulting, moved back to Norway, ended up building a DevOps consulting business with some Danish friends. We grew to 50 people over 5 years, and I was the CTO there. So that was the place where I really got the kickstart for what I'm doing now, because I had 10 years in one company doing really deep R&D, but then coming out into the world, seeing hundreds of companies in the consulting mode where you're going in, diagnosing, helping them move forward with what they're doing. And we did a lot of work in places where DevOps was trickier,
Mm,
like automotive, defense, medical device manufacturer, and financial services.
right.
And
So regulated industries already, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So it was all regulated industries. And zooming out, they all sound very different. Someone was talking about an ISO standard or a mil spec or FDA requirements or whatever. But at the end of the day, it was the same stuff, right? You had to have a process that managed your risks and to follow the process in the way you made software. And then you needed the proof that you'd followed the process, because there'd be an auditor or a regulator or someone would come along and do something, basically check that you've done what you said. Solved that problem several times with duct tape and open source, and we get a spark for something. So anyway, fast forward to 2019, and we sold the company, and I just knew that this was the next thing for me, which was to build Causley. So James, my co-founder, we saw an opportunity, we validated it in the market, and yeah, we've been on the journey ever since.
Cool. And it's funny, it's a little meta right now. What you don't see on my other screen is you in a video on the Cosley website talking to me about what you guys do. But without actually going there and just popping that video in there, what do you do at Cosley?
Yeah, so I mean, it's not rocket science really. What we do is help specifically financial services companies automate a big problem that they have, which is they've got sometimes 10, 20, 30, 40,000 engineers making software, and getting that software to production, those software changes is still a problem because of essentially governance. They have to prove that they followed the process. So they have to go and show that all the risk controls have been met in the way that they do things. And because that process is onerous and paper driven, it slows them down. They do less changes, they batch up more work. So the deployment frequency is just really low. And essentially what we do is to help them automate the control functions that they need in that software delivery process in their DevOps, so that the controls are automatically performed and not manually evaluated, and the evidence is gathered automatically. So you get that path to production. There's a second aspect to this, is that we also, because we've gathered that data automatically, you have this data store of how things are changing in your systems.
Mhm.
So when the auditors finally do come, you're not taking screenshots, you're not making spreadsheets to satisfy their evidence needs. It's all there in a system. So you reduce the amount of manual effort taken like at the audit time. But then like they're all nice things to have as well. But the ultimate reason that you want those things is that then you spend more time engineering. Like
Right.
you're not finding things in audit that you're having to do remediation and you're not having to close findings. You're just focusing more and more on engineering and delivering the change that the business needs.
Let's be honest, though. The real reason that you would do this is because banks do not want to get hit with fines for not being compliant, right?
Well, there is that too. So there is a lot of stakes involved in
Yeah,
financial
exactly.
services, right?
I'm not making fun of it. I'm saying it's a driving factor, I'm sure.
Just a second. Is it too noisy for you? Is it fine?
No.
Okay, great. Okay. Then, so the fines are real, but typically people don't buy Kosli because they're
No.
trying to avoid a fine, right? It's really an engineering problem. It's like engineers are our most precious resource. They're talented people, very expensive. We don't want them to be in a system that's inefficient. This is the part that we really are focused on.
Cool. Well, I'll definitely have your video in the show notes. Yeah, but I'm already talking to Mike. So tell me, like, okay, so you start a company and we're here today, and you were telling me actually that Kosli joined FINOS because you were almost brought into it by your customers. So tell me, as a new member, and what are your goals? Member success, like we would already talk about this, but tell me what your goals are for integrating yourselves within the community, because that's what makes a good membership, I think. But go ahead.
Yeah, I think that like people always get a bit suspicious when a vendor shows up in one of these kind of open forums. And for
Yeah.
good reason, right? You don't want a bunch of people coming in and trying to pitch products at you. There's a reason why FINOS exists, and that's to foster collaboration, specifically around open source, and create this forum for collaboration between financial services companies, which is really important. And it's already been really successful. I'm very impressed with the Git Proxy project, for example. It's really done something valuable for the whole membership. So why are we here? Well, we're here because what we see is amongst our customers, there's a common challenge that they have that open source is really well suited to solve. And it's not typically what you would think about when you think about open source. But FINOS already gets this. It's around control definitions. So like the AI readiness thing is a great example where folks have said, okay, we really want to work with AI, but we have to do it under, we have to manage the risks in this. How do we define the risks? How do we manage the mitigations? And what we see is on the SDLC side, when it comes to defining SDLC controls and implementing them, most folks have got the same rules, right? It's around code review, vulnerability management, deployment approvals. It's a finite number of things that are more or less the same.
Yeah.
But everyone's written their own. So with their own quirks that have to fit with their own ways of doing things. But because they're all custom, there's often a conversation with auditors, with control owners. Well, why have we written it like this? Why not like that? How do we know this is the right way to control this risk? What we've, from having worked with many customers in the space, is like, you're all basically got the same thing. If we could just come and do like common control definitions, then we could point to, well, this is how we do code review. We do it like this. It's based on a standard that all the other banks are doing. We haven't made up the control out of nothing, and there's a good basis for it. It's not code, right? But it's about coming together to like form consensus and build an asset that we can evolve together over time. And honestly, FINOS is the best place to do this. If it didn't exist, we'd have to create something like it.
Right. So now you've done an incredible advertisement for FINOS that I'm going to replay over. So your face may be on our website too, Mike. But no, that obviously that is why we exist. And I think the taxonomy and ontology of what is being built in like the CCC SIG and also CCC for AI, which is coming up, and then AI as well. Like you're right that there are so many controls that, as I started, like when we started CCC, was it 2 years ago? I was part of the go to market team in order to actually put it out there. And so it took me a long time to figure out, like, okay, why are we doing this? Well, kind of as you're saying, that it was, if you can, I put it to other people as like, okay, banks have to use the cloud. Cloud service providers have the cloud pieces. It's all pretty much the same. It has to go up and go down. And if it gets out, then that's bad for everybody. So, like at least if there's some type of ontology that allow and taxonomy that allows everybody to understand what we're doing, then I saw on the security side, the attack vectors are minimized, which I was like, oh, now I get why words have meaning within this aspect. So I think it's interesting that you went that direction on that as well. Anyway.
What's really interesting about it as well is that it's the words where people meet. Like as technologists, we can often get caught up in, oh, it's the tools and like, let's make this library, let's make this product, let's make this thing. But in the end, like, especially when it comes to governance and compliance, it's about meaning in the minds. So like lots of people look at nobody's going to look at the SHA-256 sum of your Docker image, but lots of people will look at it and say, well, do we know where our binaries come from? How do we identify the binaries in our world? And that's something you can have a talk to an auditor, a compliance officer, a manager, a security person, and an engineer. They meet at these words. And in social anthropology, you've got this concept of a boundary object, which is something that can pass from one context to another, but still share enough meaning that crosses the boundary. And that's why I think that this is a really interesting space to be in, because if we do it right, we can all get better. By like security people have a real important function. So do auditors, so do engineers. If you can find a way for them to meet and have shared understanding, it's really valuable.
All right. And then they can go back and actually do their specific jobs with the idea that, oh, it's under this frame and we all understand what the frame is. So
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. So I don't want to keep everything on what are you doing under the FINOS umbrella, but are there other things, you mentioned Git proxy, but are there other things within FINOS that you're seeing that for you, specifically for Kosli, but also what's drawing you beside, like everybody's on AI, I get it.
Yeah.
But what's drawing you, like, what do you think that are problems out there within financial services that I don't want to say are necessarily solved by FINOS projects, but in general that you're looking at and going, okay, like we at Kosli are dealing with this. Us is dealing with these different things. Are there things that you're like, oh, here's something that we should all be paying attention to besides the AI thing?
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's a great question. I think I might answer it by not answering the question though, because I think what's really important or powerful about FINOS is the fact that you've created a community, right? The whole point is the community. So you have people from all these different institutions and vendors, by the way, coming together to share knowledge. So what we know for sure is that a few years ago, like figuring out how to have common controls for the cloud was really important. And folks have gathered around that problem and solved it over years in the common controls framework. And the next new thing is AI, right? And then people are swarming around that and understanding their place and learning together to figure out how to solve for this new opportunity. And there'll be something else next, right? Okay, well, now we have LLMs. And next year will be something else, and the year after. And I'm sure you've had forays into dead ends as well. Like maybe there's been blockchain technologies that didn't go anywhere or whatever. But the interesting thing is not so much about the particular technologies, is that people with facing common issues work together to solve the problem together. And that's for me why FINOS is why it should exist, right? It's this opportunity to bring the folks together that talk. And actually, I think that I went to the FINOS OSFF New York meeting last year, but the talks were great. And it was great to hear what the different projects were doing and what people were experimenting with and so on. But really, the hallway was like where all the really interesting conversation was happening. But that's the other thing. You get people around a cup of coffee in the hallway and you start to get oh, we're really struggling with this, or everyone's talking about all this fancy AI stuff and we've got budget for it, but like our real problem is in the basement with the database, or it,
Yeah.
it
I was listening to a podcast this morning and it's on marketing, but it was interesting that one of the people in it was like he has a company that like does AI consulting, jumping into a business and then trying to figure out how they can use AI or use it better in order to really, 10x their business or whatever. But the thing he said most CEOs I talk to, they do not know the difference between using AI and workflows. And he said that half of their problems are really a workflow templating type issue, as opposed, which I think is what you're identifying within your company as well. That they're not necessarily an AI issue; it's a workflow. So that's probably what you're hearing more of. Like, yeah, we have money for AI, but we really don't need the AI part of it. We just need to like have a system that works, build on top of that, and then scale with AI back to your agents as well.
yeah, exactly. And like, there's definitely like AI is a transformational technology, or at least LLMs are a transformation
Yeah,
technology. AI has been around forever, right? It's
right.
it's it's what drives Google. It's in the kind of the very foundation of a lot of products that we love. It just so happens that we don't really call it AI, right? We don't call Google an AI company, but
Right.
this is the home of AI. And I think that that's what we're going to find out. We're going to say, oh, LLMs are cool. But in the end, it's going to be real problems that get solved at a higher level that people get excited about and actually form companies around.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to kind of go back to you looking at saying that there's obviously not a future 15 years ago or whatever when you're looking at
A little bit more than 15 years, I'm
agents.
afraid.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm just saying that now, as you're looking at things and open source or not, like how to that point of workflows that like a lot of agentic stuff is just exactly that. But what are you seeing, or do you think you're seeing anything on, as far as what you're doing before, what you're looking at projecting in the future, and then now what you're seeing? Like, is it the direction that you thought it was going to go? Where do you see things futurist for us? That would be nice on agentic AI.
Well, it's funny. Literally, I think the title for my thesis project was an AI classification agent for an AI agent for email classification. I think that was what it was called, and it was using, I think, using methods back then, but it was pretty basic AI. But even back then, like people in the AI research space were talking about agents. This autonomous agents would be the thing. And that this is more than 20 years ago now, and there was just zero applications, zero examples. Like it didn't exist as a thing. This was even before service-oriented architectures and so on. So it's like,
Okay.
but they still had the idea and basis. It's there. And like fast forward to today, and I'm writing guides and papers about agentic auditing, and it's exactly the same concept, right? Autonomous agents that can evaluate things and take action. So the idea is as old as time, but what's happened is the technology finally got to a place where it's possible.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that actually answers your question, but my feeling is that like what we've done is in the last 20 years, done the hard engineering and built the computing power that could actually make it happen. But there's a whole bunch of AI that can happen without full LLMs that is way more small scale than has always been possible. And I think that's the interesting part. What I'm getting excited about now is like, because we're very much into the governance space, it's like how we can use agents for this. Because audit is a big, expensive, time consuming workflow problem. Essentially, it's like ask a bunch of questions, evaluate the data, ask more questions. There's an agent solution here that's just like super exciting for us.
That's cool. That's cool. But it also, I think, like the parallel that you were drawing in the taxonomy and people understand language, like it kind of goes back to like you've come for full circle, I think, in what we were discussing, like even from what you saw 20 years ago to now with the agents as well.
It's exactly that. Because, like, again, codifying a shared, again, this boundary object concept, like, you have really good concepts defined, like in cloud controls or in whatever we call the project we're working on. So I'm getting a call. whatever we call the thing we're collaborating on in the DevOps change management seg in FINOS, those definitions will be great for people, but they'll be just as good for AIs, right? To say, okay, this is your standard. Let's take that standard and look at the data and compare. So even in this kind of stuff that seems really far from tech, it is actually a really big tech enabler.
Yeah. That's in a marketing sense, I would think too, going back to your example of Google, something Google has always said for like search is do not write it for Google, write it for people. That basis will always make you win in the end. And I think your thoughts on collaboration between the engineers, the governance people, all the above, do it for the humans, and the AI will just make it better, I hope.
Yeah. Yeah. In the ideal case, it's going to be we're all better from having done the work.
Yeah, exactly. So, Mike, you and your team will be at OSFF London in a couple of weeks, right?
Very much so.
So I'll put your LinkedIn profile, Kosli website as well. But if you're going to be at OSFF, please look for Mike. Now you know exactly what he looks like, and his Kosli team. And I'm looking forward to meeting you in person, and then seeing what we do throughout the year.
Yeah, likewise, Aaron. Appreciate the time, and also looking forward to drinking a coffee and getting in the hallway track.
I may have a beer by the time we meet, because
Very good.
just saying, if I have a flask, you know what happened.
Very good.
All right, cool. Well, again, thank you for your time, and looking forward to seeing you. And yeah, let's also look at maybe doing this again later on in the year and seeing where we've gotten to. Okay.
Yeah, it'd be great. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Cool. And with that, I'm going to say good day, good night, wherever you are.